And I kept going.
I guess we're ready to get going. I have 3 o'clock, William.
Okay.
Okay, this is the salesperson licensing task force as determined by our last board meeting. We are mission with looking at the salesperson licensing process, from including things like testing, background checks, and the licensing process itself, and see what we can do to help streamline that process. And I guess, William, we should go ahead and read a roll. Let's see. I see Maurice. I see Chris Mayer. You can hear me, right?
Yes, sir. I can hear you.
Okay. And here's the big one. David Duncan, can you hear me?
Can you hear me is the question.
Congratulations, David. We're all set there. Who else do we have on the on this call? I see Ann from
Yes.
VADA, Tommy from VADA. Who else is on the call?
Can you hear me? This is Christian Parrish. I'm on the phone. Can you hear me?
Yes,
I
we
can.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Other people on the phone, please identify yourself. I see JTV there.
William, I'm calling in. Notice I'm not wearing a set of these.
Okay, who is this? Okay,
that was
David.
David. Who else do we have on the call?
Okay.
Okay. William, who do you have with you?
Okay, in the conference room, we'll have Peggy Bailey, who of course is retiring soon. We have John Saul, who's the IT resource, and Rick Sight.
Okay.
That's funny. All right, that's good there. Can anyone hear me? I don't need to be heard. My name is John Summer. I was asked to introduce myself a minute ago, and I had to dial in.
Okay.
I'm from JTZ.
We can hear you.
Great. I'll shut up now.
I won't say thanks to that, John, but thanks. Okay, so William, if you want, I'll make a couple opening comments as we get into this. I guess I've done a little research since we met at the dealer board meeting. I've talked to William a little bit, and others, to try to understand the issues in the process. And I guess, as I look at kind of an outline for today, there's really 3 separate components to getting someone licensed here in the state of Virginia. And that's, one component is the salesperson testing. One component is the background checks that we need to complete. And then the third component is the physical licensing themselves that the dealer board does once all the information is submitted. So it may be most helpful to kind of break this elephant down into 3 pieces, and maybe start by first talking about the salesperson testing process, which is really has changed here quite dramatically with COVID-19 and the DMV office closures around the state. And, as I started to research this, and I told William I was surprised by this, there's almost 700 new salesperson license applications a month and about 700 changes per month. So over, close to 1,400 changes in a typical month. I had no idea the volume was anything close to that, quite candidly. But with DMV offices running on a limited basis and on an appointment basis, it has given us some real challenges. I think those on the call would probably agree that right now through the DMV process, William, I would say that it's probably 2 weeks if you want to get an appointment for a salesperson's license.
I would say that's probably best case scenario.
Yeah, so it's a big problem. It's it's a 2 to 3 week time frame. And I know, kind of jumping ahead a little bit, William, I know your staff has helped out, and your field support personnel are doing some testing to try to assist in this process. But candidly, even when we do that, there are just not facilities around the state that we have access to that give us the kind of space we need to be able to hold, fairly large crowds of testing. So many times we're proctoring 1, 2, 3 people at a time, right, William?
That's correct.
And how many field people do we have out there?
We have 11.
11. So we're making a difference in this problem, but it's not as big as we'd like to make. And quite candidly, the issue again is testing accommodations around the state. We've done some research, right, William? We've looked at state police, VDOT, and other agencies.
Yes, along with community colleges, other public places, yes.
And we can't find them. Now, we haven't gone to like hotels or anywhere like that because of the cost involved in doing something like that. But we just can't find the accommodations right now outside of what DMV is doing and what we're doing to help that will allow us to really take a significant chunk out of this problem. And this is really probably the first thing to talk about. Some people have suggested that maybe we accept the practice test that can be done online as a valid way to do testing. And I don't know a lot about all the legal code and processes in the state of Virginia, but I'm not sure if we can get around the code, and that the code probably says right now that they have to pass a test administered by either DMV or the board. William, how does it work right now?
Yeah, it's basically a test administered by the board, yes.
Okay. So, we're open. This is a great discussion topic to kind of start right out. I mean, this is an ugly problem right now, taking, probably in best case, 2 weeks to get somebody tested out, and in worst case, probably 3 to 4 weeks to get somebody tested out.
I've got a question for you, Ron. We've got Alvin from the Independent Auto Dealers in Virginia on the phone. Alvin, is that something that the Virginia Independent Dealers Association could step in and handle on a statewide level to resolve the issue of testing for salespeople? Could you comment on that, please, Alvin?
This is definitely something we can table. We are already conducting the dealer operators class. We have been, we had them mostly at community colleges, and because of COVID-19, we can't teach there. We came to the conclusion that it's actually cheaper to rent hotel rooms with large space that we can still maintain the 6 feet distance and accommodate large groups of people. And it's not very expensive at all to rent them for the day. It is very inexpensive way to do it. So this is definitely something that we will be willing to do and step in for it.
And how would we, let's talk a little bit about logistics. How could we do something like this? How could we schedule it, get notification out there to the dealers, and maybe hold periodic sessions around the state? What would be some ideas around that?
Okay, it will be very similar to the dealer operators class that we teach. We teach the dealer operators class in different areas of the Commonwealth, and we schedule them sometimes a year in advance. So at this time, we can schedule them a month in advance, and we move forward. And let's say Northern Virginia, which is a high concentration, we can do Manassas, we can do Fredericksburg, we can do Richmond, we can do Charlottesville, Danville, and then move around the Commonwealth and different dates, and then we'll see that most of the time you can fit about 30 people. Motor vehicle dealer board prefers we don't surpass 40 capacity per class, but this is a minimum of 10. So it is definitely something that the Virginia independent dealers can definitely help accommodate. We're already used to doing it.
Okay.
William, this is Chris again. I'm sorry, Ron, to interrupt you. William, would there be the ability to do classes larger than 40? And I'm just saying, if you're doing 1,500, well, you're only doing 700 new licensees, which means you'd only have to test 700 people per month. You know, if we were doing 2 classes a week, it seems like we could probably handle that, especially if we were rotating around the state to do it. Is there anything that would prohibit you from granting us to be able to do that?
Well, Alvin is speaking for the dealer operator course, which is a whole lot different in the sense there's a 2-day course. There's a lot more material for the individual to retain and be aware of. What we're dealing with now would be probably strictly based off of the governor's executive orders about social distancing and required space to provide adequate protection for those testing, as well as those proctoring or giving the test. So it'd be a little bit different.
But-
Hey, Ron,
Yes.
this is Ann Gambardella. We are the ones that had suggested that you consider using the online, currently you can take a practice test online that is identical to the test that you would take in a DMV customer service center. It randomly selects questions from the same group of questions that the machines in DMV would select, and then it tallies on the bottom what questions you've answered correctly. So as you're going through those 20 questions, it's showing you on the bottom that you've gotten 7 out of 8 correct, and then you've gotten 9 out of 10 correct, and at the end it'll show you what your tally is. And so in the same way that, yes, the code says that the test should be administered by the board, but right now the board doesn't administer it. It delegated that activity to DMV. So in the same manner, I don't know why you couldn't delegate that activity in a different way, either through the VIADA if they wanted to do it, or through someone who wanted to take this practice online test and just create some procedures for how that would be proctored, whether it had to be proctored by another, licensed person in a dealership, so that if there was any, that would both certify that the test had been taken. That way, if there was any question about whether the test was taken, it wouldn't just be the salesperson applicant. It might be the other person who signed the form that said, yes, I watched this person take the test. 20 questions doesn't take very long. So, it certainly would be something that the dealership should be able to do easily. It could also be that you would get a whole group of people together and have somebody proctor that practice test. The dealerships could get together themselves and do that. But it certainly seems like that is an easy solution in that it operates the exact same way as you would at DMV. We just need to figure out a procedure to that makes everybody comfortable as far as certifying those results, whether it's taking a screenshot of the at the end of the test that shows exactly how many questions were answered properly, having somebody sign something, whatever those procedures might be. But that is the exact same test you take at DMV today, or whenever you can get an appointment.
So if the only issue would be potentially just verifying who took the test, right? And some kind of a commitment that the person, in fact, that got the score was the person that took the test without any assistance from anyone else.
Right. Yeah. Some sort of procedure that would allow that everybody feels comfortable with. And I don't know what that is. I mean, I would certainly suggest, taking a picture of the screen or a screenshot of the screen that, again, it'll show on the bottom. You can go onto the website right now and take it. It keeps a running tally of the questions you answered properly, and then having some sort of, whether they sign that or whether there's some sort of form that just says, I, X person, am applying for a salesperson license and I took this test. And then you could have somebody else sign, say, I watched them take this test, and they both sign it and send it in. I mean, I don't know that it has to be complicated, but whatever makes everybody feel secure.
William, do you have a comment from a state perspective? Is there, I'd love to take everyone's word for it. Are there issues around this as far as validating the fact that the person taking the test?
Other than the fact that that's huge, that's a big deal. And I guess also I have a couple thoughts on that. First of all, we're in a situation that nobody asked for or saw coming. And one of the things I guess we've always been taught as agencies is that this situation does not give us the authority to break the law. The law right now is what it is. And now, is there a way for somebody to grant us a waiver to do something different? I don't think so. And maybe the board has the authority to do what Ann is suggesting. It might be possible to do that. I'm not saying it's not possible. We have definitely explored it and are looking at things like that. But right now, the way the code is written, we have been administering the tests with the field reps based off the fact that the code does say so. Her point about the DMV being doing the test for us is a valid thing. DMV has done tests for us, but that's also a agreement that the board has with DMV through the MOU that allows DMV to do that for a specific fee to do so. So while DMV is actually the source of the test itself right now, they're doing it with our permission and our blessing, and we have worked through the details with them to, I guess, account for the testing and get the information we need back for our database to show that the person is who the person is, because DMV validates that the person A is person A. So we have confidence that the person taking the test is in fact the person that should be taking the test. So, and that's why we deployed our field reps out there to proctor the test so that we can still say the same thing. They are checking for IDs. They can validate the person is who it's supposed to be that's actually taking the test. And, you know, it's unfortunate things happen where they happen, but, you know, given the circumstances, we're doing the best we can to help. But I would say, well, right now, though, that's something that can be explored, but I don't have a good feeling about it in the sense of not knowing for certain that the individual testing is the person that should be the one testing.
Right. I mean, and it's a good point that, you know, we can further investigate. I'm also very intrigued by Alvin and Chris's comments around what the IADA can do to assist in this. Because again, our biggest issue has been the testing facilities and having access to them in any kind of a realistic time frame. So, you know, Alvin, the challenge would be is that, you know, I guess I'm not sure who pays for these facilities. I don't know that it's in our budget, but and we would have to be getting around the state on a pretty periodic basis, probably biweekly. You know, to really make this work, and that would allow us to get the testing done about the same time the background checks would be done. But comments, thoughts?
Well, Alvin mentioned a month out. A month out is, like I said, it's too long. I think that's just too long. And I'm looking ahead to the logistics part of it. So then I guess my question to VIADA rather would be, what is the cost then? What are you projecting the cost to be? Because we make $50 off the we charge $50 for the salesperson exam, right? So we got to talk money and things of that nature as well. And I'm sure renting is going to cost you some money to get the facility and to pay for the instructors and things of that nature.
We don't think this is going to be a long-term effect. So, I mean, I'm open to suggestions from Motor Vehicle Dealer Board and I'm sure that you have an idea what we can do. These facilities cost on a daily rough idea between $300 to $450 to rent a day. And then, you know, the instructor is, I mean, that's part of what we already have and accommodate. So, I mean, I'm not looking for anything extra from that matter. So we already have it. But the cost of the facility is probably going to cost with taxes and everything somewhere around that price range. I do have to put, depending on, we're just going to do hourly appointments or how we're going to do the appointments for them for testing. All that has to be figured out with William and figure out how we're going to do those appointments. We can probably see a lot of people in a day because they just come periodically. They're not there like the dealer operators class. It's a whole different way of doing things. So this is definitely something that if we could have 100 people in one day because they come different hours. So this is a matter. So then we could easily accommodate the pricing of the testing. We're not looking to make, you know, money out of this. We're looking to facilitate the dealers that are taking the test and going through this matter. We're not thinking that this is going to be a long-term issue. If it is, then we can definitely look at something else and increasing the price, or maybe looking at what else we can do together with William and coming with a mutual agreement. Now, talking about what Ann was saying as far as doing it online, I have been looking at different things online with my IT department. And the only thing they can do as of right now very fast will be a scanning tool to be able to scan the driver's licenses. That still doesn't tell you that that person is the one taking the test. So, unless you have a Zoom person administering the person that is taking the test and a Zoom that, and then at the same time they're scanning the licenses, that's the only way you can really tell that the person taking the test and the person with the driver's license is the same person. It has to be perfected. It takes a lot of time. It's not going to solve the problem we have right now. The quickest problem is like basically what we do with the dealer operators class. This is something we can put together in a matter of a week or so. It's just a matter of putting the money together and figure out the expenses and figure out the locations. And right now the availability of the hotels is wide open. Nobody's booking anything, so it's wide open. We can definitely facilitate the franchises and the independents in booking all these licenses.
May I interrupt, John from JTZ Enterprise? To speak to the online solution, Mr. Melendez is right. It's pretty simple to create an app that will scan a driver's license. And so the question becomes, what fulfills the state's needs? Because we could provide an online solution that wouldn't be limited in time or geography. As Mr. Cody has pointed out, there'll be a number of meetings needed to be scheduled around the state, and invariably you're going to wind up with parts of the state being turned off because they don't get visited as often, to where an online solution eliminates all that. So what if we had the ability to A, scan or record a license, and then B, paid a human to sit in front of another Zoom-like meeting like what we're going through, and that human being would be here at our place, for instance. It would have to be during business hours. Maybe we could expand business hours to go into the evening, but I don't think we need to. But that human being would verify that what we're looking at in the Zoom is the same as the license that I got scanned, and then it becomes the same as Miss Ann, I believe, I forget which Miss Ann mentioned earlier, and that the onus is on us. We would have to verify or ascertain that we believe this person took this test on this time, and we could go so far as to record things like the driver's license, the Zoom meeting. We would do everything we'd have to do to protect or to stand behind our word, but we would not be able to solve everybody's issue. If you don't have a computer with a camera, you're out. If you can't use your phone, you're out. But if you're a good enough salesperson, I think your employer will help you out. Would that type of validation or verification, Mr. Childress, be suffice? Is that a possible thing?
I'm not going to say it's not possible. We need to look at that more, get more detail to look at it, because it comes back again to, I think the human being there watching, I think that helps a great deal. So I think it's possible, yes.
Well, William, respectfully, that's all I was saying. All you're really talking about is who's the one that's certifying that they watched. Mm-hmm. Who does that person have to be? Does it have to be a VIADA staff member? Does it have to be, somebody from, from JTZ Enterprise? Does it have to be or somebody in the dealership? That's all. There's nothing different between the three things that were just described to you, except who does the certification that the test was taken by the person that they claim to be. So you just have to decide whether and how far out you want to grant that permission. And in my mind, that's just part of the board administering the test. You come up with the way you administer. Right now, you do it through DMV and your field staff. You could also say that you're going to allow the test to be administered in another way. So we would just ask that you consider, particularly during these trying times, that because you could do the online stuff right now. What I just described to you could happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
if the board agreed to it. There would be no delay. There's nothing to develop. All it would be taking an online practice test and some sort of certification that the person had passed it.
Our cost would be $10 to $20 per licensee per test, whether they pass or not. $10 to $20 varies depending upon what do you want from me. Do you want me to store and archive videos or scan driver's licenses or both? And you asked him the cost. That's why I'll butt out now.
I would envision, I mean, if you let another licensed person in the dealership certify that somebody had taken the test, that would have no cost.
Mm-hmm.
William, I wonder if is there any other precedent by any other agencies or licensing organizations in the state that have dealt with this same very problem? Cosmet, I don't know. Anybody that has kind of had to forego the in-person validation process and has come up with another way to do it?
We haven't talked to anybody, not that I'm aware of. We can definitely do some research to see, I guess through DPOR with maybe the real estate or maybe the lawyers. We can check on that. But I know the lawyers have their tests in person, so with that one.
Yeah.
And also, we put out there,
William,
we cannot increase the price. The price is by code $50. We can't go no higher than that. So
William,
yeah,
I think it might be an opportunity, and I'm going to say this because I've been teaching the dealer operators class for 2 weeks now, but I think you could add a day. A dealer operators class happens almost every 2 weeks somewhere in the state of Virginia, and because you could bring many people through the class, depending on, because it's only going to take 30 minutes to administer a test to somebody. You can bring many people through if you just added a day onto the dealer operators thing. So for instance, if you're in a locality for 2 days, on the third day, you could have the same instructor just administer the salesperson's license test. And through the VIDA, we could start that process almost tomorrow as well.
Yeah.
And then, to the tune Alvin was saying, at 150 people that you could get through a classroom in a day, if they were only there for a short period of time, you could knock that 700 people out almost immediately just through the standard testing we're doing with the dealer operators on the same schedule with the same instructors.
No, I mean, I'm hearing what you're saying, and I think the idea would work well if we're able to do it in the more urban areas like Northern Virginia, Richmond, and Tidewater. I see that possibly working well. And it might be a combination of things that we're talking about. We need to probably look at it and try to do to accommodate it. But I think also, as Ron said in his opening statement, we had no idea that was 1,400 people between original sales licenses and transfers that we were dealing with on a monthly basis. And the transfers are pretty simple. That's pretty straightforward. We've got that down to the point now where they come in, they get processed quickly, and they're out of here. So it's not an issue with the transfers at all. It's only with the originals. And with the dealerships now doing their own background checks, if that stuff comes to us all at the same time, the background check along with the application and everything, that shouldn't be but a couple of days now. So I really think that a lot of things that we're talking about is going to fix itself in the sense of the refined process. But the issue now that we're talking about, though, is getting the persons tested for the original sales license. That's where the crux still lies. And you have a possibility of getting an appointment with DMV, but you probably have a better chance of getting us there to proctor the test or one of these other ideas that we're talking about. So I think it's going to get better or more or quicker than people think, but time will prove that to be right or wrong.
So notwithstanding Ann's comments on online testing, fundamentally the question becomes, what are we willing to accept as far as, people skirting the process and coming up with ways to, come on, we all sit on the dealer board. What are we willing to accept? And if we did let's say we did rotate around the state kind of thing, what are we saying? We want to get to within 1 hour of geographic areas once every other week. And if somebody wants to go a little quicker, they would drive an extra hour to get to another testing center. Maybe you pick, I don't know the state well enough to really say, maybe there's 6 testing centers you rotate around throughout the state. and you're somewhere all the time. Every week you're somewhere, and if somebody really feels the need for a more urgent test, they could drive a little further to that locality. I mean, I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out where I clearly don't want it to take more than a week or so if we're going to force validation of the ID of the person taking the test to ensure that they are who they say they are and that they didn't receive assistance. If that's the route we want to go, then I think if it takes a week to get tested, I don't know that that's a bad thing. It's clearly not what we have today, but would that suffice for now? Maybe it's a combination. Maybe it's a rotate around with testing locations. Maybe, William, we go to DMV and we say, hey, we need this slot of time, and we get, the commissioner to commit to some set of appointments around the state that we can utilize. We would be responsible and make sure we can fill them, but maybe it's a combination. I just don't know the answer to. I love Ann's idea, but are we okay with that? Are we okay that somebody may not be who they say they are, or they may get assistance from somebody else to pass the test? I don't know the answer to that.
Mr. Cody and Mr. Childress, may I add something? So another solution could be, for example, here in the Virginia Beach area, in our home office, we can do testing immediately. We have the space available. We can set up one office or two offices for people to administer the test. We are already linked with DMV with a fob to be able to put in the grades already. So we already have that connectivity with DMV. It will have to be, call them again and tell them what we're doing once we get approved. But we already have the approval to connect to DMV and do in the testing side, as we do with the dealer operators. So we can roll this extremely fast in the Virginia Beach area if we do that testing here on site in our association.
No. Okay. And the big four, really, I mean, Northern Virginia's got to be the monster. Northern Virginia, Tidewater, Richmond, and then, somewhere in Southwest Virginia, right, would probably be the key localities we have to do.
But this location will have no cost as far as rent, and that's why I was saying that.
Right. Okay.
We'd be able to offer our location in the Fredericksburg area for the same reason, given the same opportunity.
And what are the limitations as far as number of people in those areas based off the social distancing requirements? I mean, is it 4 or 5, 10 people? What are you talking about, number of people?
We would prefer one at a time, but we can file them in. And all I'm doing is giving them a test. We would have a classroom. We have enough staff here, and the space we have allocates more than that. But we would see a waiting room for those. You can wait in your car like you do your pizzas right now if you like, but one at a time until.
What would you see for Virginia?
I'm sorry, sir?
I was asking Alvin, what would we see for Virginia Beach? How many people? I mean, can you do multiple people or just one or two people?
We could definitely do multiple people. We can probably do 2 to 4 at a time.
Okay. Okay. Other thoughts, comments, guys? I really like the idea of the larger facility, some schedule, periodic. They know when you're coming. They know where you're at in case they want to drive somewhere to go do it. And you could do 30 or 40 people at a time. In Northern Virginia, you could do 2 or 3 classes. I mean, 2 or 3 tests in a day and do 100 and be done in one day because the test doesn't take long.
Right.
So I love the economies of scale of being able to do 30 or 40 people at a time.
Ron, I would be willing to commit as an instructor to Northern Virginia on a mass scale, obviously with the blessings of William and in association with the association, to doing the larger classes of 30 people at a time in a 6-foot setting where everybody's social distancing correctly and doing 3 classes a day. We could do them in Northern Virginia pretty easily, in the Tidewater, Richmond area, and in Southwest Virginia. It'd be pretty easy for the VIDA to put together a team to do that and get that done. So we'd appreciate the opportunity to put that forward, and I'm sure Alvin can put the details behind it and submit them to William.
And you would already have privy to the locations you might use that you've used before for your classes? Because I know you
we would use the same. Yeah, we would use the same locations in some circumstances because the instructor is already there, and it's just an additional day for the instructor to stay at that location and administer the salesperson testing. Obviously, Northern Virginia, anywhere Manassas, Fairfax would cover Northern Virginia in that high density area, and then we get to the other high density areas. You pick a place that Newport News, like we just left down there, or even Richmond would be a great location to do those in.
And William, this is Ann again. We also have field staff at VADA, so if this opportunity is available, we'd like to be able to have our folks do that as well. If it's going to individual dealerships and proctoring the exams or having, centralized locations, if you're looking for somebody outside the dealership to certify that the test has been taken by the person who they claim they are, let's make sure we're giving that ability broadly so that there can be many different iterations of this, not necessarily one big room, but if the VADA wants to have their Northern Virginia field person go out to 5 or 6 dealerships in a day and test all the people that they want to have tested, they should be able to do that as well. So would maybe our strategy be to be somewhere every week and to be in every locality every other week?
I think that's perfect, Ron. Yes.
So would that be 3 teams or at least 2 teams? Because you got 5 localities throughout the state for the most part, 4 or 5 every other week.
I think it's going to be at least 2 teams. Mm-hmm. And if they had to add a 3rd team, Alvin can handle that.
Okay.
And I mean, right now, my thought process is that everything sounds fine with that. The field rep probably can do the proctoring just to keep it consistent and keep it fair to both associations. Not that anybody's gonna do anything to favor their own people, but we can work between the 3 of us to make this happen. I need to do some more exploring, but so far I'm on board. I think we can handle it so far. It sounds good. Just need to get some details worked out. But if the goal is to have it every week in at least 2 places, every other week, whatever the case is, that is definitely a lot easier on the staff than right now, because right now my staff is running around on a daily basis to different places. If it means going to 1 or 2 places a week and doing it over a period of a day, I think I'd rather have that than to have them run around every day doing testing, because they're not doing the other work because they're doing testing right now.
Yeah, so so you go to 5 localities over a 2-week period, and if somebody wants to drive a little further because they're in a rush to get their license a little quicker, they could do that. We'd have to have some kind of a sign-up process or registration process in order to book those localities. I mean, I'm sure you guys have all done this kind of thing before. And William, I still think, is there an opportunity to go back to DMV and the commissioner and talk about getting some level of support from them or priority for X number of spots a month or something that we could do? So,
we're not. I can give a shot.
If DMV gives us 200 slots around the state to help fill the holes, or some number that the commissioner can say, listen, it's not going to go out 3 weeks. We'll hold these spots for within a week of the test time, and if you don't use them, we're going to give them away. But if you do, we can give you guys a little priority. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's just maybe another thought.
So we can talk about. So now I guess the big question now is, okay, we have this. We're the subcommittee, and we're to bring back, I guess, suggestions to the board for the next board meeting. So we got a lot of work to do to get this thing ready on all fronts, including my conversation with the commissioner about those slots, Ron, that you're speaking of. So there are some things we can do in the meantime, but I guess something like this, I would think the board needs to hear it and approve it.
Yeah, I think let's just I do think that at some point we need to go back, report to the board and approve what we're doing. I guess the next meeting's September.
Right.
I think we should just further solidify what we're talking about. Maybe, follow up to this meeting with everyone's thoughts. Think about localities, timing, how you would do it, who would do it. You said, William, field people can help as well. VIADA has kind of a lock on places they could use. And again, if we're going to 5 localities and we're doing, 30 spots every time, we're going to do 100 to 200 people in no time. So, I think we can get our hands around this. And then what would the registration process look like? How would we do that? Where do they sign up? Is it the motor vehicle dealer board website, or we just got to think through how would we do this? Because I really think that, given the ability to go ahead and move forward with this, timing continues to be of the essence. It's just, in some cases, this process has taken so long that, you have an unproductive employee on staff for 30 days before they can sell a car. We just can't, I guess maybe some of the large dealers maybe can afford that, but that guy that's got 1 or 2 people selling cars, and we see a lot of those guys, they can't do that. They can't do that. So maybe in our next meeting, let's further bake this, make sure that we understand how we would do it. Alvin, thank you for your input, and Chris, everybody. Come up with a recommendation. And if you could, can we go to the commissioner in the meantime, William, and just kind of float that lead balloon and see what happens?
Mm-hmm. I plan to, yes.
Okay. And I'm not trying to knock down your idea. I don't know what level of comfort we get with, and we being me and everybody else, with validating that the people that took the test really were the people that took the test, and there was no assistants in the room at the time of testing. And I don't know how you accomplish that right now. And I guess me being kind of old school, I still think that's somewhat of a big deal. But again, whatever this group wants to do, I'm all ears.
Yeah, again, my suggestion was that to have another licensed individual in the dealership make that certification, because they'd be putting their license on the line as well. And just rely on the seriousness of that to give us some comfort. The other thing you may want to consider, I think this is one of the things that JTZ Enterprise was talking about is, can you watch somebody taking the test remotely? Or does it need to be in person? Because, congregating a bunch of people together when you can do things remotely is not always the best way to stop spreading a virus. So, just be in the same way that we're having this meeting remotely, is it possible to have, somebody proctoring a test remotely?
Yeah, no, I get it. I don't know how you get to economies of scale quickly that allows you to make a big difference. You know what I mean? I know you could do a Zoom meeting or you could do some other meeting, but you really don't know who else is in the room. You don't really know what else is going on in there.
I was thinking more of having additional proctors versus additional testers at one location. So that was my economies of scale was being reached by the fact that almost each dealership could do their own. And so you wouldn't need to have a bunch of centralized locations. That was how I was getting to the ease of reaching those numbers. So that's just a difference in approach, at least for the near term, until this craziness subsides a bit.
To answer some of the safety concerns, we at VIADA take extreme caution on the spread of the virus. We make sure we're 6 feet apart. In some locations we require they put tapestry on the tables. We mandatory face masks, and we provide them in our classes. We also take temperature as they're entering the room. We take the temperature of each student coming into the class. So we make sure that the people coming in don't have or could spread the virus to other people there. We take extreme measures on this, and we also, the first thing we do is we have incidents in the past, so we verify the driver's licenses. This is a process that takes, a good 15 minutes before everything starts to ensure that things and safety and concerns are addressed before administering a test or a class. So yes, we do take all these cautions to ensure that our teachers are safe when they're there, but everybody maintains their distance. If they approach the teachers, they have to, wear their mask, and the teachers will put theirs on. But we take extreme cautions in these classroom settings, and so far it has been great. We haven't had any incidents of anyone showing up with temperatures, but we always have our thermometers in our classrooms.
So if our design point was to be in every locality, within a 2-week period, we would have to test within a 2-week period 350 people. Just take the 700 and cut it in half on average. William, we'd have to think about, I don't know how those 350 spread out across the state. In other words, you need 100 in Northern Virginia, you need 75 here. If you've got any statistics on what we would have to do to provide adequate testing facilities in each of those localities, where those lump sums are, would be helpful in trying to, orchestrate and architect something that'll work.
We have to look at that. But I know North Virginia, the field rep there is basically just doing salesperson testing all day. So, but we can get that.
Yeah.
Ron, I will be prepared to come back. I'm sorry, Ann, go ahead.
William, I just wanted to comment on Ron's, what's the split of the 600 and some exams we've done since May. Over 50% have been in John Smith's territory, which is Alexandria, Arlington, Fairfax, Chantilly. So, I mean, we're talking a big chunk is in Northern Virginia. The second largest would be Virginia Beach Tidewater. They've probably done close to 150, 175. And then the others are just smattered around Fredericksburg and Harrisonburg and the rest of the spots, Richmond.
And
as I was saying, I'll get with Alvin between now and the next time we meet, and we'll bring you back some numbers that we can handle from Northern Virginia and the Tidewater area, and give you more concrete information on what we can do to help solve the problem.
And Mr. Cody, it's very easy to add a tab in our website to have all the people log in and make appointments. So we will create a roster. It will take 1 day to design it, and I'm sure JTC knows that that's true. And all we have to do is tell our designers, hey, this is what I want, in 1 day it's live. And we'll put it on a website. We'll have, where they can go in and choose the blocking. As soon as that block is full, that won't allow them to register for that hour. Then they have to go to the next hour that is available. And then that's the way we'll do it to all the appointments throughout the state. And then let's say, for example, they come here and we do, let's say 50 in 1 day. At that point, then we'll have to enter those tests in the computer system with DMV, gather all the tests, and email and send them to DMV in Richmond. So they will have the testing, the copy of the driver's licenses, and whatever they require us to do when we administer the test. So that's a rough idea of the process that I think that we will be required to do.
Okay, and logistically, if you did multiple tests at the same location, you could do one every 2.5 hours or so? What would be realistic?
I think Ann or William will be able to answer that question more for me.
I pretty much feel that if you got a place for the day, and the test shouldn't be, there's only 20 questions, shouldn't be that long, but some people do take more than a half an hour to do the test. So I would think if you do 3 tests every hour and a half or every 2 hours, that should suffice.
Okay, but
So
we would have
we can do 4 tests a day in an 8-hour period then, William, is that what you're saying?
Yep.
Okay, so 4 times 30, if you had 30 people in a class, you're almost at 150. So
Yeah, but if the space allows for more and everything's met social distance requirements and everything, it could be a bigger place. So, but we have had people come into this office to take the test. It's taken longer than half an hour. So some people do test different speeds, and if you go to DMV, the same thing. There's no time limit. So, but it shouldn't take that long.
And just to interject here, so let's say you did 3 or 4 at the same hotel, let's say.
Mhm.
They would clean the room in between, or wipe down the tables, or do okay.
well, the hotel we're at here right now, which is in Manassas, has been phenomenal. I mean, they literally come behind and wipe everything down. Everything's fresh. It's all brought to new. And if it was a requirement for us, I'm sure they would do that for us. I mean, it's something, if we had 2-hour sessions, we could certainly spend a few minutes. It's not going to take 2 hours to do a test. So even the person who was administered the test, you could, de-lice all the room if you had to and wipe it down.
Okay. Any other discussion on the testing process right now? Okay. Thanks for everyone's input. Background checks, William, we went to the new process August 1st.
Yes.
And we have 2 vendors screening, 1 in Career Builders right now?
Correct. We have 2 that are approved, and we have about 3 or 4 more that are going through the process right now.
Okay. Are we aware of any holdup here? Is this process working as designed, or what I'll call the less sophisticated background checks, not mine, but somebody who hasn't been behind bars, in 3 to 5 days is I know that when you get a rap sheet like mine, it takes a little bit longer, but are we aware? Are there any issues, holdups, anybody being delayed that shouldn't be delayed, et cetera, et cetera?
Not to my knowledge. The process just really started. I don't know if we received some background checks from some dealerships all along, but since we started August 1st, I can't tell you how many have come in with the required information. But as we stated earlier, though, if the dealership can submit to us the application completely filled out with the access code on the 61 for the background check, and with the approved provider, along with the payment, we should be able to process it within a couple of days at the most. Because at that point, the problem we have now is that everything that DMV did for us previously, when they went to a DMV and did it electronically, we have to now manually do those same things in our systems to update DMV system. So it's going to take a few minutes to update each application, but that's something we've been doing since May 13th. Even when we do these mass testing that we're talking about, we have to still bring the test here, grade the test, and input all the information into the database. But it's still better than what we've been doing previously in terms of time. So it's something we can get done quickly, but it's going to take some effort to do it.
So, but as far as in associations, if you want to chime in, have you heard of any issues thus far with the background check process itself and the 2 vendors we currently have approved?
This is Ann. I haven't heard anything yet. I know that some of our dealers are still waiting on some vendors they requested to be approved. So hopefully that'll help going forward as well.
I think
Okay.
it's too early to tell.
Okay.
Yeah, and those vendors that we're talking to, a couple of them almost on the last lap right now. Just a matter of seeing some documents they got to provide, or some misunderstandings and how the process works. Because most of the background check vendors are accustomed to doing the 7-year background check, whereas we require as far back as possible. So it's a little bit of a difference, but we got a few more that are probably coming through hopefully in the next week or 2. And as we approve them, we will update the website and send out constant contact, or send posts rather, letting the community know that now here's a new provider that's been added to the list. You can use this provider as of this particular date.
And the key benefit there is not only the hopefully streamline that process, but now it's an electronic handoff of an access code.
Right.
So we're not shipping that information across the internet or,
Right.
Okay. So it's all electronic.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm going to assume background checks do not need any further discussion at this point. Is everybody okay with that? Okay.
Yeah, it sounds good.
Okay, so then, William, and you alluded to this a little bit earlier, the actual licensing process itself. So I know that you guys have 40 or 50 people at your building that sit there waiting for this data to come in, and within milliseconds, we can get it done. You and I and Peggy and a bunch of people have talked a little bit about this, the things we can do to try to streamline the actual licensing process and try to make it as quick as we can. If everybody fills out their packet, their application, they do the background check, now it's on our doorstep. Let's talk a little bit about how it gets to our doorstep and what we do with it once we get it.
Well, right now we're getting overnight mail in most instances. We do have some dealers that put it in regular mail, which may be here anywhere from 4 to 7 days, but most of your franchise dealerships especially will put it in overnight mail. As I alluded to a few minutes ago, at that point we receive it and we put the person's qualification into the database, into our system, so that the license and things will print out, and we will have the history information of who the individual is, the day they took the test, and the fact that they passed the test, all those good things. One of the things, I guess, in the conversations that Mr. Cody, Peggy, and I had after the board meeting was a quicker way to get that information to us. And one of the things we talked about doing is an electronic process where the dealerships can send that 61 completed to an email address, which is something that we can do. The only issue with the email address is that because the application contains a T number or a social security number, it has to be a electronically secure network, which means that we will have to get email access to allow that to happen. Now, my understanding from my IT resources for the dealerships, it might not be an issue for you to get this software, but for us to get it, we have to pay for it for each computer that we put it on to actually receive these emails that will have this sensitive data attached to it.
So that means we can do it, we can't do it. I mean, what
Well, to me,
can we go electronic?
Well, let me say this. There's a positive to this and a negative to it. The positive would be that we get rid of the overnight mail and we have a document that we can receive electronically, and we can start to process it. Okay, because otherwise, right now, we receive mail physically, whether it's overnight or U.S. mail. We open the mail, we log the mail into 2 different books for accountability purposes. Then we assign the work to the technician. This electronic process could speed things up in terms of us actually receiving it and starting to work on it. But again, my thought process is at this juncture, if it comes completed with the background check information attached to it, it shouldn't take a lot of time for us to process it.
Right. So we were kind of brainstorming and, not knowing all the security issues around this. What happens at Motor Vehicle Dealer Board, William, for lack of a better term, is everything comes into one fire hydrant, and you guys have to sort through it. And there's a percentage that's done right. There's a percentage that has to be sent back. There's priority 1s, priority 2s, and priority 3s. We try to give priority 1 to licensing, right? Whether that's a dealership facility or salespeople. So it's been a priority 1. And what we were thinking we could do, if this idea would work, would be have a separate mailbox for licensing. So it's not getting caught up with everything else that's coming into the dealer board each day. Albeit we have to make sure it's a secure connection. That way dealers could electronically transmit the information to us. We could potentially send some kind of a verification back that we've received it at the dealer board so they know we've got it. And then provide some kind of a service level back to them to say, hey, we can get this process completed within, X number of years. See, William, I gave you time. And, within hours or days or whatever we want to do, have some service level agreement there. And I think I might have even talked to you about this. I'm not sure who we talked to, but I know Peggy then had the idea about once you guys get it all registered with DMV, instead of waiting for DMV to come back to you, take a screenshot of the DMV screen, or the dealer could maybe log on and check as well but you could send a screenshot back from the DMV system that in fact the salesperson is licensed. I know that, Ann, I think you guys came to us and said, can we just assume that if you get it, it's good, and if we don't hear anything, the person's licensed? I think somewhere in between there it would be. I want the responsibility on the dealer to submit the right stuff in a timely fashion, so we're not redoing as much as we redo today. Maybe give a priority mailbox to it. I know William will assign staff as he can to it because, again, it's a priority one for the dealer board, and then get some electronic verifications in place here so the dealer knows that we're going forward with the approval process. And as soon as we get an approval, is to potentially transmit that some way electronically, as opposed to using the mail systems and everything else we use today. Is that, William, a kind of a synopsis of where we think we're trying to go?
I would say that, and I would ask one question though. As far as what two things for you to just be aware of: no complaints, it's just reality that we have to deal with. When we process a salesperson's license, to print that sheet off that we've been faxing and emailing to dealerships, that adds an additional 4 to 5 minutes to each transaction. That could be processing time. That's just reality. I'm not saying we don't want to do it. I'm just saying that that's taken away from maybe another 1 or 2 applications being processed and getting out there to the licensed salespeople. But that's what we promised you. That's what we're doing. But now that we're doing it, we realize how much time is adding, or how much time is taken away from other things being done. Number one.
Hey, William, this is Ann. A question for you. There's a list of salespeople available online right now. When does that final transaction that you're talking about printing the screen of, when does that show up online? Does that show up immediately? Does that show up 2 days later, or does it just feed through the database? Does it update at night? What is the process? Do you know?
Overnight batch.
So the next day it would show up online.
Yes.
So you're talking about a few hours, essentially a few working hours, where between when you would print it off and fax it versus when it would show up online. And if there was a way for the dealer just to check online that the person was licensed, I don't know, print off a screen if they needed it. I mean, I know the code says you gotta have your license with you at all times, but the board could just define license as, the piece of paper that you printed off from the website, or you could just take an enforcement position that at this point you're just not gonna worry about that. But if that's the case, Ron, I mean, that's not very many hours. And if it's taking that amount of time from the staff, maybe that's something to consider. As long as it's being updated quickly, it's not gonna change substantially the amount of time it takes to get something back to the dealership so they know.
So the dealership might submit their packet. They get an electronic verification that we've received it, and maybe the deal is within a day or two they start checking the DMV website for their salesperson name, and if there's an issue within X amount of time, they contact dealer board.
I mean, I think that seems to be something that would save a lot of time. If that's batching overnight like that, then it's, again, if you're processing the salesperson's application at 2 o'clock on a Tuesday and you can fax something to the dealership, is it really that much different than having it essentially available at midnight for the next day? And is it worth the extra time for each of those applications? And I don't know that it is, because by 2 o'clock on a Tuesday, the person's not trying to work or sell cars.
And to be specific with you, my understanding is that it's updated by 8:30 the next day.
Okay.
So 8:30, so that's the time. And Ron, on the I guess receipt that we have received the email, is there a problem with the dealerships using receipt requested? Because again, for us to stop and type back a few words, got your email, that adds up.
So originally what we talked about, and to answer your question, no. The answer, I'm sure there's no reason the dealership couldn't do read receipt request to do it. Just says you open the email. We could clearly do that, but we also maybe were thinking about, I know with your vast IT resources, I hope John's on the call, maybe they get an automated email when it comes into our mailbox saying we've received it.
Yeah, we've talked about that, and he can program that, but that don't necessarily mean that we saw it. But we could do that.
Yeah, we haven't seen it, but we got it. And it's just like, it also doesn't say we think it's valid yet because we haven't had a chance to review it. But at least it's assurance to them that we did receive it. And the clock starts, whatever that means. But Ann's comment, real good one is that it's not really worth doing all this screenshot stuff and taking all this manual time when honestly 8:30 tomorrow morning they could see it on the system. Okay. What else?
I think you covered everything.
And Alvin, what have I missed? Anybody else? What are we not talking about we need to talk about?
I mean, I think you've covered everything.
Okay. So, William, we're scheduled for another meeting a week from today.
Yes, you think that's enough time, or do you want me to push it back a couple of days? How do you want to do it? Because I think it's scheduled for next Tuesday right now.
So the next dealer board meeting is September the
14th.
Tell me, my
I think we hit it while we're hot. We're here, we're hot, we're making it happen. I think we need enough time to prepare for the dealer board meeting. So I think we hit it next week at the same time.
Yeah, I'd agree. I'd stay on the same cadence right now because I'm getting old and I can't remember that long. So, this might be the right thing to do. Is just every week, let's just keep getting together and let the ideas bubble up and let's come up with the best deal we can.
Okay.
Everybody else okay with that?
Yes.
I need to hear you say something to know that your mic works.
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. So next Tuesday, the 18th.
2 o'clock.
2 o'clock. We'll go back to 2 o'clock. Is that good for everybody?
Yeah.
2 o'clock's great. Yep.
Yeah, and do a little research. Keep thinking about it. We're kind of thinking 5 localities. Northern Virginia, the big one. Tidewater, 2 hours per session. 3 to 4 sessions a day, 3 a day probably. If you could do 30, you could do 100 in a day. That kind of a deal. Let's keep staying on that. And then William, what that catcher's mitt looks like at the dealer board when that background check comes in, the application comes in. And Ann, I'm going to keep wrestling with your idea of practice test.
And while we have everybody together, the dealer portal meeting tomorrow is canceled. There is no meeting tomorrow. We're working with the various vendors, looking for demos rather, and other things. And I will give you at least a week's notice when those can take place. So, but there's no meeting tomorrow.
And William, did Maurice Slaughter get the email that he's chairing that now because the commissioner thought it was too much to give me 2 at once?
I would probably
break it up. Yes.
All right, I'm good. If anybody else have anything to add? Thank you very much for your time. A lot of great ideas. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a great day.
Thanks.